In the past half an hour, the presenter at the centre of the BBC scandal has been named as Huw Edwards. That's after nearly a week of allegations about inappropriate behaviour. Being identified by his wife, Vicky Flind, she said in a statement, "In light of the recent reporting regarding the BBC presenter, I'm making this statement on behalf of my husband, Huw Edwards, after what have been 5 extremely difficult days for our family. I'm doing this primarily out of concern for his mental well-being and to protect our children." Huw is suffering from serious mental health issues. As is well documented, he's been treated for severe depression in recent years. The events of the last few days have greatly worsened matters. He has suffered another serious episode and is now receiving inpatient hospital care, where he'll stay for the foreseeable future. Once well enough to do so, he intends to respond to the stories that have been published. To be clear, he was first told that there were allegations being made against him last Thursday. In the circumstances, and given Huw's condition, I would like to ask that the privacy of my family and everyone else caught up in these upsetting events is respected. I know that Huw is deeply sorry that so many colleagues have been impacted by the recent media speculation. We hope this statement will bring that to an end. And in the last few minutes, some more breaking news. The BBC has just reported that Huw Edwards is facing yet more allegations of inappropriate behaviour this evening. The fresh accusations are that he behaved inappropriately towards colleagues at the BBC, the broadcaster has reported. We don't have any more details on this yet, but we will bring you those details as soon as we have them. Well, Huw Edwards was last publicly seen. I saw him there because I was there myself at an industry awards event only 2 weeks ago. It's the Trick Awards, the television and radio industry club, where he gave this acceptance speech.
Thank you very much, dear friends. Thank you to Trick and thank you to the people who voted. Fergal and Catherine and Claire and me, on behalf of a huge team of people back at the BBC, thank you all very much. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you.
Winning this award for live event, what does it mean to you?
So this is to do with people who watch, okay? So for me, this is very, very special. And the funeral, it was something that really connected with people. There were hundreds of people behind the scenes. So this is for them. I mean, it really is.
I'm joined in the studio by my panel, politician Ali Milani and broadcaster Claire Muldoon. I take your initial reaction, Claire, to this story. I don't know whether you had heard that it was Huw Edwards or not, and now you know whether you're surprised or not.
I had heard, and I'm not surprised, obviously, because I had heard that this was the case. What I don't want to happen is the parallels between him and Philip Schofield are so close, and the fact that everyone was trying to draw on timelines of everything that's happened. And we mustn't use mental health as an excuse for his behaviour. There are people with mental health issues that don't behave in a way that is obstructive or behind or working behind his family's back. And I think this statement from his wife, Vicky Flind, is so from the heart, seeking forgiveness and seeking remorse and seeking the fact that
she doesn't seek forgiveness or ask anything about remorse.
She's acting for, I think she's asking for support in her husband's...
Can you respect the privacy of my family? She doesn't say anything about forgiveness or remorse. Either thing.
Vanessa, but she's got
but
nothing.
She doesn't.
But she doesn't need to be forgiven. It's not her behaviour.
She hasn't mentioned... The only person to mention forgiveness or remorse is you. She hasn't mentioned it.
She must feel absolutely awful, as must his 5 children.
But now you're projecting. I'm sure she feels awful because her husband's ill.
She did say in the statement that, for the sake of her children and their family, can we just keep this, safe? And I think she tried to put a big full stop in it. I don't think she has, because this playground of Twitter, this playground of media circus is just going to envelop, and it's going to roll and roll and roll. And until the BBC actually, because they were told, my other question is, why did the BBC wait until last Thursday before they told Huw Edwards, when they must have had the details from the family in May when the Sun told the BBC? There's so many unknowns here. And there is so much projection, and yes, I'm guilty of that. But, it's difficult not to project when you feel so much for the family involved.
Ali, obviously you're watching and listening like everybody else. This news has just broken. You may well have been among the people who knew that it was Huw or had heard that it was. Had you heard that name until just now?
No, I first heard it on the escalators on my way up
to
your green room. I had no idea who it was. And I think this whole episode is scandalous and disgusting and a farce, because what we've seen is like you're mentioning, this whole circus around Twitter and the media, I think everybody has been pointing fingers at different presenters. You may have known, but the rest of us didn't. And so, you know, we've had all different presenters in the BBC being accused. We've had reporting that, if I may say so, is just shameful without any serious evidence.
In what way?
In the sense that we now can see that the reports, not just from The Sun, but across the board, there has been very little serious evidence to back up the reports that have been made. And what that results in is speculation. What that results in is people
Well,
being
actually, we
pointed
don't,
fingers.
hang on, wait 1 second. We don't yet know, actually, whether there's a lack of serious evidence.
Well, the police have
but
now.
but that's
The police
serious.
have said
Wait a
it's
second.
not.
That's serious evidence of criminality and breaking the law. But whether there's a very concrete and visible, for example, paper chain of payments made, which is very clear to see, or chain of contacts made and visits made and all those other things, that's a different thing. And there may not be a legal case to answer,
Sure.
but there
the
certainly seems to be, as Claire's saying, a moral case to answer, a behavioural case to answer, a case of a dichotomy between the way in which someone projects themselves, and when we say someone, we mean Huw Edwards, a family man, upright, an elder of the Church of Wales, and then this kind of behaviour. I mean, there's a lot, I think, to see here, not nothing to see.
No,
here,
I'm not saying there's nothing to see,
here.
but the implication was absolutely that there was some form of criminal behaviour that was involved in this, because the victim was supposedly 17 years old and Huw Edwards was a lot older.
That was a suggestion and part of the story.
Sure, but there was, at least we can now say that it's very clear that there was at least little to no evidence that there was any criminal behaviour that took place here, and that is where I'm saying it was misreported, and that fed the Twitter furor, that fed the farce that we've seen over the last couple of days, where different presenters have had to come out and say it wasn't me because their families are being bombarded with allegations and abuse, and so I just think this whole thing has been disgusting. It's not played the British media or even the political scene in any good light. And what I'm particularly worried about, this should absolutely be investigated by the BBC internally. You're
it will be. It's about to be.
And if there are any other, if there are any allegations or any impropriety that's taken place, that should absolutely be looked at.
We've just heard that there's even further news that's literally just broken in the last 2 minutes about, other members of staff at the BBC talking about impropriety there.
One of my big worries...
And I have just said what a great pleasure I always found it to work with him, what a charming person he always was, because that is my experience of that. I never saw or heard anything else at all. Kevin O'Sullivan says, on the contrary, he did hear rumours. Now, he said, but they were only rumours.
Do you think, both of you, that he should have been named from outset? Do you think that would have helped in any way?
No, I
don't
think
Is
so.
it a case
No.
of, should this whole case be in the public domain?
No.
No, I hope, I would have hoped that the journalists covering it, broad number of journalists from broad number of organisations, would have been more responsible in their journalism.
So therefore, I maybe think that it might have been an attack by The Sun against the BBC more than Huw Edwards.
I would absolutely say that if Huw Edwards did not work for the BBC, that the story would not have been presented, not just from The Sun, but would not have been presented in the same way.
Yes, but that's because the BBC is an entirely different entity from any
Sure.
other organ of the media, and therefore...
There is also a quiet campaign against the BBC, I think, to destroy the BBC's
true,
reputation.
But let me just go back to our reporter, because if you're just tuning in, we have had confirmation in the last hour that Huw Edwards has been named as the presenter at the centre of the BBC scandal. A reminder that only 2 weeks ago, the Star, one of the highest paid and most high profile at the corporation, was accepting an award for his work. Let's go now to our correspondent, Oliver Whitfield-Mirchich. He's been outside New Broadcasting House all day for the latest on these fresh allegations. And Oliver, the story continues to gather apace, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Now that news has been confirmed, that name has been confirmed as Huw Edwards, as revealed by his wife, Vicky Flind, who also says that the BBC star is in hospital suffering from a serious mental health issue. The reaction here at the BBC from both staff members and from the general public who've been walking by is one of shock. And now we're also hearing that the BBC will have to investigate allegations that the BBC star Huw Edwards had potentially acted inappropriately against other staff. Now, this was a question which was posed to Tim Davie only yesterday during a briefing about the BBC's annual report. That question and answer session taking place virtually, which we were not allowed to record, so we couldn't play it out on screen. At that question, we were given the response by Mr. Davey that it was inappropriate to comment further. So he was asked specifically whether there were more complaints against either the presenter, the centre of these allegations, or any other presenter, and at that point Mr. Davey said it would be inappropriate to comment. It is now clear that the BBC has had further allegations which has come into it, and the BBC will not only be looking at the first allegation that was made. There have been now 3 other people who've been identified, 1 by BBC News, 2 by the Sun newspaper, and now potentially more coming into the BBC themselves. All the while, there has been no official confirmation about what the future entails for Huw Edwards. He has worked here for 39 years. He's been a stalwart of some of the biggest national events that we have seen by our national broadcaster. We do not know whether he will resign or whether he will continue in his work. The BBC will continue its investigation after the police said that they will not be carrying out any further inquiries. We will continue our coverage live here from outside New Broadcasting House throughout the evening.